This wasn't the agreement. You promised I would be the most beautiful woman in the world. I gave you everything you asked of me. What do you want now? That girl can't be a threat to me. I want all her beauty to be mine. I want her turned into a beast, cast into the forest, and forgotten by all forever. Once upon a time, in the lush and enchanting kingdom of Ogu, nestled in the eastern heartlands of Nigeria, there lived a king whose name alone could silence a noisy market. His name was King Ezebili. He was not just wealthy. His riches could fill 100 yam bands and still overflow. His name was carried far and wide like the scent of burning palm oil soup on a breezy afternoon. But what made King Ezebili truly beloved wasn't the gold that jingled on his robes or the fleet of royal horses he owned. It was his heart, a big, kind, fatherly heart. Unlike most powerful men, his wealth didn't stretch his ego. If anything, it softened it. He ruled not with an iron fist, but with an open palm, always ready to give, to guide, and to uplift. The people of Ogu adored him because under his reign, joy was plentiful, farms were blessed, and no child ever cried of hunger in the streets. Beside him stood his jewel, Queen Soma. Ah, Queen Soma. If kindness were a person, it would wear her face. Her laughter danced through the palace like wind chimes. Her hugs could melt the coldest hearts, and her generosity was unmatched. She had a way of making even the stiffest elders in the council grin like boys, licking honey from their fingers. She was a queen in every sense of the word, graceful, wise, and warm like evening sun. And together they had a very beautiful daughter. She was a miracle wrapped in royalty. Her name was Princess Morgan. And from the first moment she cried in the palace courtyard, the sun stood still to listen. Morgan was breathtaking. Her eyes held the depth of river stones. Her skin glowed like moonlight over fresh palm wine. And her smile, that smile could heal a broken spirit. No one had ever seen such beauty before. As she grew, so did her beauty. It was not the kind of beauty that faded in the sun or needed beads and bangles to shine. It was a kind that deepened with age, glowing from the inside out like the fire beneath a clay pot. But it wasn't just her face. Princess Morgan had a heart like her mother's, tender, cheerful, and full of love for her people. Every new moon, King Ezebili would ride through the villages on horseback, parading with grace and purpose. He was not doing it for show, no. It was his way of staying close to his people, checking their welfare, listening to their needs, and handing out gifts to the villagers. And guess who was always right beside him? Princess Morgan. Always eager, always smiling, always lighting up the path like a lantern in the dark. The moment the villagers heard the sound of royal horses and trumpets, they would abandon whatever it was that they were doing and rush out in droves, not just because of their generous king, whom they revered so much, but because they want to catch a glimpse of their beautiful princess. No matter how many times they saw her, they never got tired. Morgan's beauty made mouths hang open like doorless huts. And after every parade, the village would buzz for weeks as they talked about the princess, some in admiration and others out of jealousy. In the markets, by the river, even in the palm wine joints, The only thing people talked about was the princess. Oh, did you see her long hair? Her skin is like freshly peeled yam. Her smile nearly gave me goosebumps. The villagers just had many things to say. But in addition to her beauty, Morgan had that rare charm that made loving her so easy. She listened when others spoke. She helped whenever she saw a little opportunity. Once, she even climbed down from her royal horse just to rescue a chick from a muddy path. Her heart was a priceless treasure, and with her heart, she won the respect and admiration of the villagers. When Princess Morgan turned 15, a shadow crept into the palace. Not the kind that came from the setting sun or flickering torches, but the kind that made even joyful drums grow quiet. Queen Soma, the light of Ogu, fell ill. At first, it seemed like a simple fever. Nothing the palace herbalist hadn't cured 1,000 times with bitter leaves and steaming concoctions. Everyone believed she would rise again with her usual grace, laughter echoing through the halls like music. But as the days passed, the fever grew stronger. Her skin, once as radiant as polished brass, turned pale. Her laughter, once loud and full of joy, became a whisper. Something wasn't right. King Ezebili, who had always been the fortress of calm, began to panic. He summoned the best herbalists, not just from Ogu, but from distant lands. Some arrived with long feathers and mysterious powders, others with beads that rattled ominously when they walked. Potions were brewed, prayers were chanted, sacrifices were made. But nothing worked. Not even the great priestess of Ojiriji Hills, who once claimed to have healed a dying lion, could save Queen Soma. Then, one quiet night, just as the sun disappeared behind the palms, the queen took her final breath. That night, the entire kingdom fell into silence. No flute played, no drum was beaten, even the birds refused to sing. From the grand palace down to the humblest huts, there was only one sound, the sound of weeping. In the palace, King Ezebili was totally shattered. He dismissed all the guards, locked himself away, and tore his royal garments in half as he wept like a child. His cries shook the palace walls. It wasn't just the loss of a queen, it was a loss of his heart, the loss of a woman he loved so deeply. Princess Morgan too refused to be comforted. She locked herself in her chambers. Her cries were muffled behind thick doors, but the palace maids said they could hear her gasping for breath between sobs. The girl, who had always glowed like the moon, now looked like a candle fighting the wind. The days that followed were heavy and grey. The palace, once full of music and laughter, now felt like an empty shell. Everywhere was unusually still, and the air, the air itself seemed to mourn. But time, the tireless healer, crept in with quiet footsteps. Slowly, painfully, life returned to the kingdom. Markets reopened. Drums started to whisper once again. The people, though still grieving, began to smile and go about their businesses. And so did Princess Morgan, though her smile now carried a weight it hadn't before. King Ezebili, seeing his daughter's sorrow and sadness, knew he had to rise again. He wiped his tears, straightened his crown, and promised himself that if he could no longer be joyful for himself, he would be joyful for his daughter. So, a new bond, stronger, formed between father and daughter. They began to spend more time together. Every evening, They would sit in the palace garden, eating roasted meat, sipping wine as the king told stories, funny ones that made the princess laugh until her ribs hurt so badly. But as time passed, Princess Morgan, wise beyond her years, saw through her father's cheerful mask. She noticed the way his eyes lingered on her mother's painting, the way he would lie on his bed curled up sadly, the way he sometimes paused mid-laughter, like a man remembering something he would rather forget. She loved him so deeply. It's been over a year since her mother passed, and she wanted more for him. One warm evening, as the fireflies danced like tiny stars across the garden, Morgan turned to her father. "Father," she called gently. King Ezebili turned to her smiling. "Yes, my gem." She hesitated. "Don't you think you should get yourself another wife?" The king blinked, then laughed, a loud, hearty laugh that startled a sleeping owl nearby. "You've really grown, Morgan," he said between chuckles. "I can't believe you're the one saying this to me." "I mean it, father," she replied, her voice soft but firm. "I see how lonely you are. You try so hard to make me happy, but you deserve to be happy too. Listen, I don't lack anything," the king said. "You are my everything, my daughter, my joy, my light, and even my little wife. You are enough for me, and I'm not complaining." "Not in the way a lover would be," Morgan replied gently. "Everyone knew how much you loved Mama. But I know she wouldn't want you to live the rest of your life in pain and loneliness. You deserve warmth again, the kind only a lover can give." The king went silent. His mind drifted back to Queen Soma, her laughter, her warm hand in his, the way she praised him when he showed kindness to people or defended his kingdom. Even after all this time, her memory hadn't dimmed a bit. He had loved her deeply, truly, and no other woman had ever entered his thoughts. Not even when the Council of Elders suggested he take a second wife after Morgan was born and the queen couldn't conceive again. "I still very much love your mother," he said finally. Morgan nodded. "I'm sure she still loves you, but she is dead. She wants you to be happy wherever she is. Maybe loving again would help you heal faster." Months passed, and one day King Ezebili received a royal scroll. It was an invitation from his old friend King Nnam of the distant kingdom of Obunede. They were celebrating their New Yam festival. King Ezebili decided that he was going to honor the invitation. Since his wife passed, he had shut himself out. Maybe his daughter was right. Maybe it was time to leave, he thought to himself. With his royal guards and entourage, King Ezebili made the long journey to Obunede. The ceremony kicked off with music, skilled drummers showing off their skills with great enthusiasm. King Ezebili sat next to King Nnam, nodding with joy. He was having the time of his life. But it was during the maiden's dance that fate decided to take a bold step. The drums changed. The rhythm grew intense. Then she stepped forward. A maiden, so breathtaking, so enchantingly graceful in a way that made people stare with admiration. Her waist swayed like palm trees in a storm. Her feet barely touched the ground, as if the earth itself was too stunned to hold her. Her wrapper shimmered with each step. Her beats clattered like sweet thunder, and her smile, That smile, it struck King Ezebili like lightning. The mighty king of Ogu stood up, slowly, his eyes wide, mouth slightly open, and for a moment, just a moment, he forgot how to breathe. The drums faded from his ears, and all he saw was her. And then she looked at him. Their eyes met. Something inside him wobbled. A warmth spread through his chest and his knees. Oh, his royal knees began to betray him. It felt like all the bones in his legs had turned to ogbono soup. She smiled again, and the king Ezebili, mighty, wise and respected, clutched his chest like a village boy struck by his first crush. When the crowd erupted in cheers and claps, he joined, although he barely remembered what he was clapping for. "Who is that maiden?" he asked King Nnam in a voice barely above whisper, as though speaking too loudly might chase her away. King Nnam chuckled. "Her name is Olama," he replied, "the most beautiful maiden in this kingdom." King Ezebili leaned back, a dazed smile spreading across his face. "I think I am in love with her," he said. "I want to marry her." His friend blinked. "You've just seen her dance, Ezebili. You don't even know who she is." "Yes, but I know enough to know that my heart belongs to her," Ezebili replied, grinning like a teenager. "I haven't felt like this since summer." Later that evening, long after the festival drums had faded and the night grew quiet, the two kings sat in the palace courtyard, sipping palm wine and speaking like old brothers. Ezebili's heart hadn't rested all day. "I meant what I said earlier," he confessed. "That maiden, Olama, she hasn't left my thoughts. I really want her to be my wife." King Nnam set down his guard slowly. He cleared his throat. "You're a man of wisdom, Ezebili. But since you're my friend, I must speak from my heart. Olama is beautiful, undeniably so. But there is something about her I can't explain. Something that feels strange." "Strange?" Ezebili repeated, raising a brow. King Nnam nodded. "Yes, for all I know, she has no sibling or relative in this village. She just appeared from nowhere, looking like the morning sun. Isn't that strange? Our men haven't rested since her appearance in this village. I don't even know what to call this, but I think you should be careful, my friend." Ezebili chuckled, waving a hand like he was swatting a mosquito. "You worry too much, Nnam. How can you be having strange feelings about a woman as beautiful as that? You should be having butterflies. Strangers live in a land that gives them peace. I have lots of strangers in my kingdom. Ever since I saw that maiden, I felt alive again, and that must mean something." King Nnam sighed. He had seen that look on his friend's eyes before. It was the same look goats give fresh cassava leaves, hungry and determined. There was no point arguing with a man struck by love's lightning. So, he gave his blessing, even though his spirit remained uneasy. And 3 months later, in a ceremony grander than the harvest of 10 villages, King Ezebili married the beauty of Obunede, Olama. The kingdom of Ogu roared with joy the day their king returned home, not alone, but with a new bride whose beauty had already become the talk of distant lands. Drummers drummed as if their palms were made of lightning. Flutes sank into the wind and dancers kicked dust into the air. With every jubilant step, the people poured into the palace square, their wrappers flying and their voices raised in wild celebration. At the center of this majestic welcome stood Princess Morgan, glowing brighter than the midday sun, adorned in full royal regalia, her hair braided beautifully and adorned with beads, her skin shimmering like polished bronze. She sat proudly atop a white horse. Her smile, oh, that smile lit up the entire celebration like a sky full of fireworks. She clapped, she laughed, she waved at the villagers with such warmth that made the young men blush. For Morgan, this was a happy day, a day of new beginnings. Her beloved father had finally found joy again, and she had dressed up in her most regal attire to welcome him and his new queen. But the same could not be said for the woman sitting beside King Ezebili in the royal carriage. The moment Queen Olama's eyes fell upon Princess Morgan, something inside her twisted, tight and hot, like dry firewood catching flame. Her smile faded, her fingers clenched the edge of her seat, her heart thumped not with excitement, but with something dark and bitter. She couldn't take her eyes off the princess. Who was this girl with such dazzling beauty, such elegance, such presence? Olama, the same woman who once walked through a crowd that made men trip over their feet, who had watched warriors stammer like boys just to ask for a hand in marriage, couldn't believe her eyes. This child was more beautiful than she would ever be. It wasn't just the skin or the smile. It was everything. Her poise, her aura, the way the villagers gazed at her with pure admiration. It was a kind of beauty that didn't need words to shine. And for a woman like Olama, who had built her pride on being the most enchanting woman in any room, it felt like a slap. The king noticed the blank expression on her face and nudged her gently. "Are you okay?" His voice startled her. She blinked rapidly, then turned to him with a forced smile. Yes, I'm fine." The king followed her gaze and chuckled proudly. "Ah, that's my daughter, Princess Morgan, the treasure of Ogu Kingdom, the beauty that makes the moon jealous." He smiled like a father showing off a prized possession. "She's beautiful, isn't she?" Olama hesitated. Her throat felt dry. Yes," she murmured, barely able to get the words out, but in her heart, thunder rolled. Beautiful was an understatement. The girl was stunning. And worse, the king's face glowed with pride as he talked about her. Olama looked at him, then back at Morgan. A seed had been planted, a poisonous seed of envy, and it rooted itself deep within her soul. And even without getting to know the princess, Olama hated her already. Olama hated anyone that stood in her way as a competition, and the princess had just become an enemy. Yet, Morgan, completely unaware of the storm she had just stirred, continued waving and laughing joyfully. Years crept by like shadows on a quiet river. At first, Queen Olama played her role well, so well that even the gods might have believed her. She smiled when she needed to, pretended to love and bond with the princess, and moved with the elegance of a true royal. And Princess Morgan, with a kind of heart that saw only good in others, welcomed her warmly. She had lost a mother, yes, but she chose to love Olama like one. And oh, how Olama tried to love her back. But deep inside, behind every tight smile, polished greeting, and fake attention, she was watching. She watched Morgan's every move. The way the villagers adored her and bowed a little when she passed. She noticed how the king's face lit up with pride whenever he spoke of his daughter, how his eyes softened in a way they never did for anyone else, and each moment fed the fire in Olama's chest. In the stillness of her chamber, she would stare into her mirror long and hard, tracing her cheekbones, adjusting her makeup, inspecting her smile. "I should be the most beautiful woman," she would whisper. "No one is supposed to match me. No one." One afternoon, the quiet storm cracked. As she walked past Princess Morgan's chamber, she paused at the sound of soft laughter, peeking slightly through the curtain. She saw Morgan sitting on a stool while a palace maid braided her hair. "My princess," the maid giggled. "You look so beautiful. In fact, permit me to say, you are the most beautiful woman I have ever set eyes on. The whole village talks about you, and yet you're still so kind and humble." Olama froze. The word stabbed deep, swift, cruel, and unrelenting. Her eyes widened. Her nails dug into her palms, and she stomped down the corridor, her slippers slapping hard against the palace floor. A few days later, as if fate wanted to pour salt into an open wound, she overheard 3 guards near the armory. They were laughing and teasing one another, unaware of her presence. "The queen is beautiful, yes," one of them said, "but not like our Princess Morgan. That girl's face is like a burst of sunshine. I could stare at her forever. The queen, she is no match to her." Another guard whistled. "If I were a wealthy prince, I would make sure I marry her. Like, she's so beautiful." Olama pretended not to flinch. She simply walked past, but inside her heart something was boiling. Pain, hatred, anger, jealousy. That night, she sat in front of her mirror surrounded by silence, yet the voices wouldn't stop. The echoes of praise for Morgan spun around her head like angry bees. Everywhere she went, every drumbeat, every whisper, every cheer, it was about Morgan, never about her. Her breathing grew uneven. "Why her?" she whispered to the mirror. "Why does everything have to be about her? Why does no one talk about me? Why can't they see me?" Her voice grew louder. "I am supposed to be the most beautiful one. I paid the price. I did everything I was asked to do. Why her? Why do I have to live in her shadows?" And then, with fury, she hurled a wine glass across the room. It shattered against the wall, red wine splashing like blood against the gold-painted surface. Her scream ripped through the chamber like thunder. Within seconds, the king and palace guards burst in, weapons drawn, eyes wide with alarm. "Olama!" the king shouted, rushing to her. "What is it? What is wrong?" She jolted at the sight of them and instantly collapsed to the ground, panting, her eyes wild and teary. "Nightmare!" she screamed. I saw something terrible. A nightmare." Everyone froze, glancing from the broken cup to her shaking hands, unsure of what they had just walked into. The guards shifted uncomfortably. The king stared at her, concern etched on his face. But behind Olama's eyes, something far darker than a nightmare was beginning to brew. Then, one evening, the stars sparkled like diamonds poured across a velvet sky. The palace garden was calm, quiet, and bathed in silver moonlight. And there, beneath the flowering trees, sat King Ezebili and Princess Morgan, laughing softly, lost in one another's warmth. The sight was enough to make any heart smile. "You are of marriageable age now," the king said, adjusting his crown, as he leaned back on the bench beside her. "Tell me, Morgan, what kind of man do you dream of marrying?" Morgan tilted her head, her eyes twinkling like the stars above. She began smiling. He must be handsome and charming. So charming that he would steal my breath away. And father, she leaned towards him playfully. He must be kind, just like you. The king burst into laughter, his deep voice echoing through the garden like a drum roll of joy. Morgan laughed too, her laughter like music from flutes. The night held them both like a warm blanket. But they were not alone. From the shadows near the hedges, Queen Olama stood stiff and silent. They hadn't even noticed her. Father and daughter were too wrapped in their joy to sense the storm brewing nearby. Olama's fist clenched. The sound of Morgan's laughter, it crept at her soul like a rusty blade. That same laughter had stolen the hearts of people, stolen the king's attention. Olama turned sharply and stormed back into the palace like a whirlwind. Once in her chamber, she knocked over the oil lamp with a crash, its light extinguishing with a hiss as the room fell into shadows. Her breathing was heavy, racked. A growl slipped from her throat as she stared at her own reflection in the mirror. All I ever wanted, she spat angrily, was power. Power and the attention that comes with beauty. That's all I ever wanted. She backed away from the mirror, her eyes wild. She is ruining everything. She is ruining everything, she shouted, her voice rising like a chorus. And I can't let her. Not anymore. That night, she couldn't sleep. She waited until she was sure that everyone in the palace had gone to bed. Then, with trembling fingers, she bolted her door, drew her curtains, and walked to a hidden corner of her chamber. From beneath a chest, she retrieved a folded garment. One not seen by any living soul in the palace. It shimmered faintly in the dark, stitched with symbols older than language itself. The moment she wore it, everything changed. The room flickered with a strange airy light, the air thickened. Her skin tingled. Then she began to transform. Her youthful beauty cracked like old paint, revealing something ancient beneath. Her spine bent, her skin wrinkled, her hair grew silver, and within seconds, Olama no longer looked like the beauty queen. She had become something else entirely, something very old and wicked. Then she vanished. In the blink of an eye, she reappeared by a dark glowing river, the sacred river Isime. Its water shimmered unnaturally, whispering secrets to the night wind. Olama stood at the bank fuming. Her feet dug into the earth as she began to chant angry incantations. Incantations that hadn't been spoken in years, summoning the powers of the water. Then the river stirred. A beautiful woman rose from its center, her skin glistening like moonlight, her eyes ageless and sharp. It was the river goddess, Isime. "You look angry," the goddess said, her voice smooth as silk. "I thought you would be happy. You are living your dream now. You have beauty, you have power, you have royalty. What more do you want?" "No," Olama spat. "You fooled me. This wasn't the agreement. You promised I would be the most beautiful woman in the world. I gave you everything you asked of me." The goddess narrowed her eyes. "Don't you dare scream at me, you ungrateful bitch," she snapped. "I took you from a ragged old woman and gave you a face that made kings fall to their knees. I deserve your respect. And I gave you blood," Olama screamed. "The blood of my 7 innocent children. My own children. And still you didn't keep your word." A thick silence fell between them. The river goddess crossed her arms slowly. "So, What do you want now? I want Morgan out of my way, Olama growled. That girl can't be a threat to me. I want all her beauty to be mine. I want her turned into a beast, cast into the forest, and forgotten by all forever. I want her to vanish from every tongue and memory. And let the eyes of everyone be on me once again. The river goddess went quiet. Summer's daughter, she said after a moment. You don't understand what you are asking for. The late queen was a rare soul. Her kindness touched the gods. When she was pregnant, she found favor with the goddess of beauty herself. That girl Morgan is a gift. She is a special child. She carries the blessing of divine beauty, and she cannot be destroyed. Olama's lips curled. So, are you saying it's impossible? It can be done, the goddess said coldly, but not completely. You may have her beauty during the day, yes, but at night she will return to her true form. Radiant, stunning, and untouchable. But know this, no curse can hide that light forever. Olama's eyes gleamed. That's fair enough. At least, people will fear her instead of admire her. She will become a monster by day, and I will shine. I will finally be the one they all admire and praise. The goddess stared long at her. There is a condition. Name it, Olama said, her voice trembling with anticipation. I want more blood. The goddess whispered, her eyes glowing. Once the sacrifice is complete, your wish shall come true. Olama smiled, her face twisted with wickedly. Count it done, she said with a bow. The river goddess vanished in a flash, leaving only repose in the water and in silence more terrifying than thunder. It began like any other golden morning in the kingdom of Ogu. The sun had only just yawned its way out of the clouds, casting soft golden lights over the thatched rooftops and red clay roads. Birds chirped. Children played in the distance and excitement burst through the air. Today was a royal day, the day the king would ride through the villages with his daughter, Princess Morgan, to meet the people as usual. The villagers quickly gathered, baskets abandoned, stalls left idle. Their eyes sparkled with joy as they saw the royal entourage approaching. But more than the king, it was Morgan they all came to see. She sat high on her white horse, her hair braided and adorned with beautiful beads, her smile bright enough to rival the sun itself. Hail the princess, someone cried. The sunshine of Ogu Kingdom, another shouted. Before you knew it, the villagers had circled around the royal entourage, hailing the princess and the king as they screamed with joy. Princess Morgan waved cheerfully, her face radiant with happiness. Her eyes twinkled as she smiled at familiar faces. Laughter rang in the air like music. It was a perfect morning. Then, everything changed. A strange breeze swept through the marketplace, cold and sharp, like a breath of something ancient and unseen. The birds fell silent. The trees rustled as if whispering warnings. Suddenly, Morgan's body began to shake. At first, she thought it was the wind, but then a deep stabbing pain surged through her bones. Her breath caught, her smile vanished. She grabbed at her sides, her mouth opening in a silent scream before the real one tore through the air. No! No! She cried out, her voice cracking with agony. The horse neighed and reared. Frightened, villagers gasped. The king jumped to his feet. Morgan, he yelled. My daughter! What is happening? But no one had answers. In the blink of an eye, her body twisted violently. Her skin rippled and warped, her limbs stretched unnaturally, her beautiful face contorted. And then, before the eyes of hundreds, Princess Morgan transformed into a beast. She was hideous, hairy, hunched, her beautiful face now fierce and glowing. Fangs lined her snarling mouth and claws scratched at the air. The crowd exploded in terror. Women screamed, men ran. Children were yanked behind their parents as they fled for their lives. Even the palace guards, seasoned and brave, backed away in fear. One guard dropped his spear and fled barefoot. The beast, the girl, let out a heartbroken roar, then turned sharply and ran straight into the forest. The laughter that once filled the kingdom now gave way to the sound of silence and whispers. That day was remembered as a black morning. The kingdom of Ogo trembled. Women stood outside their huts with their hands on their heads. Maidens sat frozen in their mothers' huts, stunned and speechless. Market stalls remained empty. Hunters refused to enter the forest. No one dared to speak of it too loudly, but the fear was real. What had become of their beloved princess? Was she now a beast forever? Would she return to devour them all? In the palace, the atmosphere was heavy. King Ezebili locked himself up in his chamber, his once mighty figure now curled up like a broken man. He wept bitterly, the cries of a father torn apart. "Who has done this to you?" he groaned, slamming his fist into the cold marble wall. "Oh, my daughter, what have I done to deserve this kind of pain and shame?" But no one had the answer. No one had the courage to even search the forest. The princess had vanished, and her name, once chanted joyfully, now echoed only in hushed tones. But while the kingdom mourned, one person celebrated, Queen Olama. She sat lazily on a silk chair in her chamber, swirling her wine in a glass cup. In front of her was a grand mirror, and in that mirror, her reflection shimmered, flawless, radiant, undisputed. "Ah, yes," she whispered to herself. "Now, no one will compete with me." She took a long sip of wine, leaned back and admired her glowing skin and enchanting eyes. "Let them praise me now," she said with a wicked grin. "Let them stare at me the way they used to stare at her." A low laugh bubbled from her throat, dark and full of satisfaction. "The beast can growl in the forest for all I care. I reign now as the queen of unmatched beauty." She laughed louder, her voice echoing through the palace halls like thunder before a storm. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, beneath the branches of an ancient Iroko tree, sat the beast, the broken princess. Her once glowing skin was now covered in fur. Her limbs felt strange and foreign, but her voice remained the same, though she couldn't recognize herself. But worst of all, she remembered everything. She remembered the screams, the fear in the villagers' eyes, the pain on her father's face, and now the silence. Tears streamed down her monstrous face as she called into herself. "What did I do wrong?" she sobbed silently. She had been kind. She had loved and never caused pain to anyone, at least not intentional. But now, all of that had been taken away. The forest had become her prison, her curse. And all she could do now was sit and wonder if she would ever be herself again. But as the sky darkened and the stars returned to the heavens, something strange happened once again. Just as she had changed into a monster at dawn, the beast began to tremble under the moonlight. Her fur receded, her claws vanished, and her twisted face slowly softened. And in moments, there she was again, Princess Morgan. She gasped as she looked down at her hands, soft, smooth, human. Her skin glowed once more. She stood beneath the moon, trembling, excited, horrified, and completely confused. "What is happening to me?" she whispered. Without thinking, she jumped on her feet, her heart pounding wildly as she ran through the forest with the wind in her hair. She had to go home. She had to see her father. The palace guards heard the sound of her feet first. Then they saw her. Her face lit by the moonlight, her hair flying behind her, her gown torn, but her beauty fully restored. They screamed, not in fear this time, but in pure disbelief. Shouts echoed through the palace walls. The princess has returned." The commotion reached the king's chamber in seconds. He rushed out, robes flying, eyes wide, heart racing. And there she was, his daughter, whole again. "Papa!" she cried, running towards him. "Morgan!" the king shouted. They ran into each other's arms and wept with joy, their tears falling like rain. The palace watched in silence, moved by the rawness of emotion in the reunion. The king thought he had lost her forever, but here she was, his moonlight, his miracle. It was a night the stars would never forget. But the joy was short-lived. The next morning, the king, still smiling from the reunion, made his way to the princess's chamber with fresh flowers and food. He opened the door gently and froze. There, where his daughter had slept, was the beast, the same terrifying, snarling creature from the market square. Her eyes glowed with confusion and pain. She growled and backed away, as if sensing his fear. The king staggered backward. "Shut the door!" he screamed. "Nobody must go in. Nobody!" Guards slammed the doors and sealed them shut. The king's legs gave way and he collapsed on the palace steps. "Bring me Ezedibia!" he cried. Ezedibia, the mysterious seer with curry-filled hair and lips always painted with ash, came quickly. He circled the princess's room. He lit incense. He threw bones. He chanted. He whispered. But even he shook his head slowly. "I see shadows, Your Majesty," he said. "Very powerful shadows. Whatever is behind this is not ordinary, but the gods are not speaking." The king's face crumbled, but he didn't give up, not yet. Driven by love and despair, King Ezebili traveled to distant lands, riding through forests, crossing rivers, seeking out powerful herbalists, prophets, and priests whose names the wind carried to him. But they all said the same thing. Powerful forces are at work, but no solution is known to man. And so, after months of endless wandering, the king returned to Ogo, broken, and a totally different man. He walked through the palace halls like a ghost in royal robes. His face was gaunt, his eyes sunken. He no longer laughed, he no longer spoke unless necessary. The vibrant king the people once knew had vanished. All that remained was a grieving father, haunted by the cries of a daughter, who turned into a beast by day and wept under the stars by night. And in the shadow of his despair, Queen Olama rose. She bloomed like a poisonous flower, glowing with otherworldly beauty that turned heads and bent knees. Her skin glistened like river stones. Her smile, once charming, now held something terrifying behind it. She seized the throne like a viper, claiming its nest. With the king locked away in mourning, Olama, having always loved to wield power, ruled with an iron fist wrapped in velvet. She wore golden crowns and flowing robes, walked through the palace with arrogance, issuing orders like thunder from the clouds. She increased taxes on traders and farmers. She forced young maidens to serve her day and night, slapping them if they so much as breathed too loudly. She had no single compassion in her and spared no one who dared to disobey her. Suffering increased in the village, and soon the villagers began to murmur and cry out. In the markets, men whispered, women cursed under their breath, but the king paid no attention to all that was happening in his kingdom. He was still lost in his misery. Every day, he sat by his window staring into nothingness, his heart breaking into unrepairable pieces. He was dying slowly, and the great kingdom of Ogu, once a land of joy and celebration, was gradually crumbling under the rule of a beautiful tyrant. And as the villagers cried in silence, Queen Olama sipped wine and smiled, basking in power, blind to the storm the gods were already beginning to stir. 3 long years had passed. 3 years since the light of the kingdom was locked behind tall wooden doors, hidden from the world. Behind those doors lived a girl cursed by something no one could explain. A princess by night, a beast by day. For Morgan, they were not just years, they were lifetimes. Lifetimes of isolation, weeping and watching the moon become her only friend. The villagers had stopped asking questions. The palace no longer mentioned her name aloud. And still every morning, she walked to see claws and fall. And every night she cried as her beauty returned, only for the world to never see it. But then, something inside her shifted. One evening, as the stars appeared like tiny diamonds scattered across the sky, Morgan looked into the mirror in her chamber and whispered, "If this is how I must live, then I will live." For the first time in years, she smiled, a real gentle smile. She deserved happiness, even if pain still lingered. That night, as her father King Ezebili made his usual quiet visit, he opened the door and stopped mid-step. His daughter, his precious Morgan, was glowing. Not just from the beauty of the moonlight. She looked lighter, brighter, and at peace. "My child, you look so happy," he whispered cautiously as he stepped forward. Morgan turned to him, her voice soft and strong. "I have accepted my fate, Papa." The king's breath caught in his throat. "I may never be the girl I once was, but I can still smile. I can still live, and we both deserve to be happy." A tear slipped down the king's cheek. For so long he had carried the weight of her pain. Her sadness had become his shadow, but now she was lifting them both. "I have a request," Morgan said gently. "Ask it," the king said, his voice hoarse. "Even if it means tearing down this kingdom, I will do it for you." Morgan chuckled lightly. "It's been a long time since I heard drums roll in this palace. Since the villagers danced. Since the fires lit up the courtyards." She looked at him with hope in her eyes. "Can we have a royal party? I mean, a night party. When I am myself. I want the villagers to come together. I want you to invite kings and princes. Let laughter return to Ogu just for one night." King Ezebili didn't answer at first. He stood there, then smiled through tears. "True, the kingdom of Ogu has been silent enough," he said. "Consider it done, my darling. But of course you should know that not everyone was going to be pleased." When Queen Olama heard the king's plans, she nearly broke her golden mirror in two. "This is madness," she hissed. "A party? For a beast? What do you think the people will say?" The king turned sharply, his eyes blazing. "My daughter is not a beast," his voice thundered through the chamber. "And you will never speak of her like that again." Olama froze. She had never seen him this angry. She bowed quickly, her lips tight with rage. She needed to pretend because she hasn't even achieved her goal. "Forgive me, my king," she murmured. The king didn't answer. He simply walked away, leaving Olama in a pool of her own venomous thoughts. Party or no party, Olama thought to herself, it changes nothing. She is still a beast and will never be fully human again. Her lips curled into a twisted grin. Either ways, she was still winning. She would ensure she made the royal night all about herself. And so preparations began. The drummers were summoned, tailors dusted off their finest fabrics. The villagers were invited. Palaces from neighboring kingdoms received golden scrolls sealed with royal wax. The kingdom of Ogo would dance and laugh again. Bonfires were stacked high, wine barrels rolled into the palace yard. The palace walls echoed with the sound of laughter and excited footsteps. And somewhere in her chamber, under the soft gaze of the moon, Princess Morgan began to dream again. The night of the royal party arrived and the kingdom of Ogu came alive like never before. Drums rolled, fires danced, expensive perfumes swept through the palace courtyards. Nobles arrived in chariots, kings in golden robes, and villagers in their finest attire. Laughter floated through the air, mixing with the soft clinking of goblets and the rhythmic beats of flutes. But even amidst all the colors, music, and dazzling lights, nothing could prepare them for her. As the palace doors opened, Princess Morgan stepped out, and time stood still. She was a vision to behold. Her gown clung perfectly to her curves and flowed behind her like a river of stars. Her long dark hair was woven and adorned with beads, and around her neck lay the late Queen Soma's secret silver necklace, a symbol of grace, royalty, and power. Her beauty was beyond words. As she walked with grace, her skin glowed like polished gold under the firelight, and her eyes held the depths of oceans and secrets only the stars could whisper. Gasp filled the air. The villagers could barely breathe. They were confused as to who this maiden was. Was this the princess? They whispered to themselves. It's been 3 long years since they last saw her. Maids almost dropped their trays. Warriors stood frozen, their spears lowered. Queen Olama, watching from her balcony, gritted her teeth so hard that the wine in her mouth turned bitter. She couldn't believe Princess Morgan was stealing the attention once again. And then he saw her, Prince Ikenna, a tall, striking figure dressed in a deep blue robe embroidered with royal sigils. He was a crowned prince of Umuchie, a wealthy and powerful kingdom across the river. His face was carved like a sculpture, his jaw sharp, his eyes intense, and his spirit free. He had come merely out of duty, but in the moment Morgan appeared, he forgot every other name, every other face, everything but her. Her presence was so captivating and he couldn't help but stare. He had never felt this way about any woman before. He stepped forward through the crowd, slowly, like a man drawn by magic, so he could get a better view of her. And as Morgan descended the steps of the palace, their eyes met. And in that instant, the world vanished. The music dulled, the noise faded. It was just the two of them. Moonlight, firelight, and fate. As the celebration began fully, the princess stood in a corner sipping wine as she watched the villagers and the happy men and women dancing. She had missed this so much and it brought her so much joy that she was witnessing it again. She didn't know when someone walked up to her. It was Prince Ikenna again. You stand out in the room, my lady. You are the most beautiful creature I have set my eyes on, he whispered, bowing low. Olama laughed softly. And you say that because you don't truly know who I am. Does it matter, he replied, not giving her word much thought. My soul knew you long before my eyes did. She laughed gently again, and the sound made something inside him flutter. The party roared around them, music, food, dancing, but they only saw each other. Can I have a dance with you? Prince Ikenna asked after a while, and the princess gave a quiet nod. The king watched them from where he sat as they danced. He was happy that the princess was having the time of her life. He hadn't seen her this happy in a long time. After the dance, they settled by a fountain in the palace garden, where they sat drinking wine, telling stories and laughing, as if they had known each other for a long time and had no cares in this world. Their fingers brushing and hearts fluttering. When the princess spoke, he listened like a man hearing poetry. And when he spoke of his dreams, she watched him with stars in her eyes. Never has Princess Morgan felt so relaxed around any man that wasn't her father. But this man by her side was different. He was so easy to be with, and the way he looked at her was just something else. She could feel her blood rising and her heart beating so loudly. And then, without warning, it began to rain. The princess stood up, swelling as she laughed loudly. Her joy was contagious. You should see her. The prince stood up, staring at her with amusement dancing in his eyes. He was staring at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. He had never seen a maiden as beautiful and free-spirited as this maiden dancing happily in the rain. Then she pulled him. It's fun, join me, she screamed. He felt his heart do a leap, and he wrapped his hands around her waist and drew her close. Now, they were staring into each other's eyes. Her heart was doing some joyful jumps, and when his fingers brushed her chin, she felt heat rush through her veins, even though they were both standing under the rain. You are so beautiful, he whispered. Princess Morgan smiled. She could see the passion burning in his eyes. She pushed his head closer, and slowly their lips met. A soft kiss at first, curious, then deeper, fierce, like fire meeting fire. Her fingers coiled into his wet robe. His hand cupped her face gently. They kissed like two souls who had waited lifetimes for one another. Time forgot itself. This was the best feeling ever. When she thought about tonight, she never thought she would meet someone special and have her first kiss under the rain. After the kiss, they held each other's hand as they allowed the cool rainwater pour on them. As the first whisper of morning brushed the sky, Morgan felt it, the shift, the ache, the warning in her bones. No, she whispered, pulling away. What's wrong? Ikenna asked, breathless. I have to go, she said quickly, her voice shaking. But wait. She stood, eyes wide with pain. I am sorry, but I thank you for everything. And before he could ask her name, before he could stop her, she was gone. She vanished into the shadows, her gown trailing behind like smoke as she vanished into her chambers. As the daylight peeked over the hills, her body began to change. And by the time the first rays of dawn lit up the palace walls, Princess Morgan was no longer the radiant girl in the beautiful dress. She was once again the beast, curled up in her chamber, breathless, heart pounding. She held on tightly to the memory of the kiss, the laughter, and the man who had made her feel human again. She didn't know his name, and he didn't know hers, but something had been stirred in their hearts. The morning after the party, Prince Ikenna was restless. He had wandered the garden at dawn, searching for her, asking questions, describing what she wore, her voice and her laugh. But no one knew who he was talking about. She wore the silver royal necklace, a maid whispered, confused. Only Princess Morgan ever wore that. No, another said. That can't be, the princess is... she's... They trailed off, unwilling to say what they truly thought. That the princess was lost, locked away, no longer someone you saw dancing under the moon. But Prince Ikenna knew what he had seen, what he had felt. That girl had touched something in him that he no longer thought his strong heart could feel. Who was she, he kept asking, and yet no one gave him answers. The palace buzzed with gossip, but no one dared speak the truth. And the king, though joyful during the party, now looked heavy-eyed again, as if something beautiful had returned and vanished just as quickly. Meanwhile, behind her chamber doors, Morgan coiled into herself, reliving every second of the night, his words, his touch, and the kiss. Her heart beat wildly just remembering it. For the first time in years, she had felt seen again, not as a princess or a beast, but as a woman who could be loved. She closed her eyes and pressed her hand to her chest, whispering the only things she could remember clearly. His voice saying, "My soul knew you long before my eyes did." Days passed. Prince Ikenna delayed his journey home. He claimed he wanted to explore Ogo's land, but everyone knew the truth. He was still searching. Every evening, he stood by the fountain in the garden where they had kissed, waiting, watching and hoping. And every night, Morgan sat by her window in the shadows, watching him from above, too afraid to reveal herself, too ashamed of what she became each sunrise. "He will never accept me if he sees what I am," she whispered to herself. "I can't continue growing feelings for him, as I know that nothing can work out between us." And as she said those words to herself, tears rolled down her cheeks. But every night, her heart betrayed her, longing to run down those stairs and into his arms. One evening, Prince Ikenna approached King Ezebili in the palace courts. He had searched endlessly but still not ready to give up. "I will not return to Umuchi until I find her," he said boldly. "The maiden from the royal party. She has stolen something from me." The king's heart skipped. "What did she steal, my son?" "My peace," Ikenna said, eyes burning, "and my heart. I am ready to pay any price just to have her." The entire court went silent. Queen Olama froze mid-sip of her wine. They both knew who she was talking about. They had seen the both of them that night. King Ezebili studied him carefully. He had seen the joy return to his daughter's eyes. He had felt something had changed in her. Could it be? "Tell me something," the king said, rising slowly. "Would you still want her if she were not what she seemed? If she carried something heavy?" Ikenna didn't flinch. If her soul is still the same, then nothing else matters. The king's throat tightened. He placed a hand on the prince's shoulder. "I will help you find her." The next evening, after much thought, the king entered his daughter's chamber. The moon had just risen and Princess Morgan was seated by her window, her fingers wrapped tightly around the window frame as she stared into the sky. "My daughter," the king began gently, "a young man has been searching around the entire kingdom for you." She turned slowly to face him. Her eyes were tired, her voice barely a whisper. "He saw me, father, the real me." The king sat beside her, his voice calm, rich with love. That young man is madly in love with you. Morgan looked away, tears brimming. Do you think love is enough, father? What if he finds out? What if he sees what I become in daylight? Do you think he will still love me? Will he still be searching for me just like he is doing now? She buried her face in her hands, her body shaking with sobs. The king reached for her hands and held them tightly. Listen to me, he said, his voice trembling. You are the greatest gift this kingdom has ever known. You were born with the heart of your mother and the strength of the gods. You are not a curse, you are a miracle. And if this prince cannot see that, then he does not deserve you. But father, no, the king said firmly. You deserve to be happy again. You deserve to be held. You deserve to be loved. Don't let fear steal what the gods may have sent to heal you. Her lips quivered, but what if he walks away? The king kissed her forehead. Then, I will be here to catch you like I always have. But go, Morgan. Go and see what the gods have written in the stars. Unknown to them both, outside the door, Queen Olama stood frozen, her face twisted in rage. She had heard everything. So, the cursed princess had found love, she thought to herself. Her jaw tightened, her eyes burned. How dare she? She fumed. That night, Olama had born with a new wicked plan. She hated the princess so much and never wanted to see her happy. That beast, she whispered to herself. The king, thinking only of his daughter's happiness, planned a quiet royal dinner date for the prince and the princess. He informed the prince with a joyful heart. She has agreed to meet you tonight, the king said. But Olama was already 10 steps ahead. My king, let them have that dinner in the palace dining. They need to stay within the palace walls, she suggested sweetly to the king. For her safety, of course. The king, not suspecting her evil, nodded. That's a perfect idea. That night, the palace transformed again. Princess Morgan was adorned in a radiant gown, embroidered with crystals that shimmered like fireflies. Her hair was wrapped in delicate twists, her lips painted a soft red, and her scent roses and midnight jasmine. She looked breathtaking. When Prince Ikenna saw her walk into the royal dining room, his breath caught in his throat. He walked to her slowly, reverently, like a man approaching a goddess. He held her gaze, his voice barely above a whisper. Your beauty makes my heart flutter. Her lips parted, but she was speechless. I haven't thought of anything else but you, he continued. I didn't know you lived in this palace all this while, yet you allowed my heart to search endlessly for you. It was great torture, if you must know. She smiled faintly, but her eyes shimmered with pain. I am sorry, my prince, she said softly, but I couldn't continue to pretend to be what I am not. My star only shines at night. Then, let me be your sunshine when your star is covered by darkness in the morning. She looked away, her voice trembling. I am not what you think. And I'm sure you do not know what you are promising. Then, help me understand, he said, stepping closer, his eyes filled with emotion. I can't, she said, the words choking in her throat. But if things were different, I would love you back. I also haven't stopped thinking about you or looking at you through my window since that night. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she spoke. Ikenna reached for her and drew her into a tight hug. She sobbed into his shoulder as he held her tighter. They sat at the table later. Neither ate much, but the silence between them was empty, warm and peaceful. I want to draw a sketch of you, he said after they had finished eating, smiling softly. I want you to sit by the window and watch the stars while I draw you. Her eyes lit up. You draw? Yes. It's a talent I don't use often, but I want something to always remember you by. Something real that I can look at whenever I think about you. So, she sat by the window, her face bathed in moonlight as he sketched her carefully, reverently, capturing her essence. When he showed her the finished portrait, she gasped in awe. But then, the moment shifted. They had spent hours together and it was well past midnight. The princess knew that she had to leave. They tried to leave, but the door was locked and wouldn't open. They pulled, pushed, knocked, nothing. The princess's heart sank. She knew at that moment that something was wrong. She banged harder, screaming, "Is anyone there? Open the door!" But the halls were empty and only silence answered. It was all Olama's handwork. She had planned it out carefully. She made the king drunk with wine and he was already fast asleep. The guards and maids were all sent away under her sweet lies that the couple needed privacy. Panic set in. Morgan fell to her knees, banging, crying, screaming. The prince held her gently, confused but calm. "He can't stay here, just till morning." "No," she cried, her tears soaking into his robe. "You don't understand." Hours passed and her body trembled with exhaustion. She had banged and kicked, screaming at the top of her voice until she was exasperated. And finally she slumped against the door, her tears silent now. Prince Ikenna cradled her, still unaware of the storm brewing beneath her skin. And then, the morning sun touched the window. A low growl echoed through the room. Prince Ikenna stared, then opened his eyes and let out a loud, terrifying scream. Lying in his arms was not the woman he adored, but a beast. His breath caught as he jumped to his feet, his limbs frozen. "Who are you?" he whispered, horror in his eyes. And then the creature turned, her voice shaking. "It's me," she said softly. "Princess Morgan." The beast turned away, ashamed. Prince Ikenna could recognize the voice. It was soft but broken. Something inside him stilled. He stayed frozen, breathing heavily, his eyes wide but searching. "Tell me," he said gently, his voice almost trembling. "Why do you look this way?" The creature looked at him, her monstrous form shaking. "Is this," he continued, the memories of her words from the night before rushing back. "Is this what you meant when you said that you only shine by night?" The beast, Morgan, closed her eyes. A tear slid down her disfigured cheek. "Yes," her voice cracked. Something softened inside the prince as he remembered his own promise. "I will be your sunshine in the morning." But how could he live with this? "Tell me," he asked, "how did this happen? Were you born this way?" "No, I wasn't born this way. I don't even know how this happened," she cried quietly. "Everything was normal until 3 years ago. One morning, I was out with my father, the king, touring around the village when I turned into this. They say someone cast an evil spell on me. We tried everything in our power to break the spell, but we have no solution. She paused, the pain heavy in her chest. I think I have to live like this for the rest of my life. And that's why I can't love you back, even though my heart yearns to. Her words struck like arrows, but not because of what she looked like, because of how much it hurt her to stay there. Prince Ikena slowly dropped to his knees. A loud, strangled cry burst from his chest, raw, deep, devastating. Tears fell from his eyes hot and fast and hit the palace floor like drops of truth. In that very moment, something ancient stirred. The winds outside howled, the ground beneath them rumbled, and the waters in the rivers stirred. Somewhere far away in her chambers, Queen Olama choked on her wine. She had been watching the entire scene through her enchanted mirror, savoring every second like a final meal. But now, something was wrong. She could feel it. Her fingers trembled. Her reflection, once youthful and divine, began to crack. No, 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 she gasped, clutching her face. Her skin was folding, her lips thinning, her hair turning grey strand by strand. She dropped the glass. No! Quickly, she grabbed her enchanted gown, her piece of power, and vanished in a flash. By the sacred river, the wind was wild, the waters roaring with unrest as Queen Olama appeared, her eyes red, her face sunken, her body trembling with fury. Emiri, she screamed, calling on the river goddess. Show yourself! The river hissed, and from the swirling depths the goddess rose, her eyes glowing, her presence thunderous. And why do you scream my name? She barked, like someone with fire in her buttocks. Have you lost your manners? You lied to me, Olama shrieked. You're a liar, a bloody liar! You used me! Watch your tongue, woman, the goddess snapped, her voice cracking like lightning. You will not stand here and shout at me. My beauty is gone, Olama wailed, falling to her knees. Emiri, everything is crumbling and you tell me not to shout? What is going on? The curse on the princess has been broken, the goddess said coldly. Broken? Olama spat. How? That beast, you promised. It was broken by the prince. What? The goddess narrowed her eyes. His tears, they are not ordinary. Olama stared, wild-eyed. His tears carry a rare gift, the goddess explained. A blessing passed from the ancient fathers. He does not cry often, but when he does, any spell around him breaks, no matter how deep. Even I can't stop him. Olama staggered backward. Why? Why didn't you warn me about him? I should have stopped them. You will keep your voice low when you speak to me, the goddess thundered, waves rising behind her. No! Olama screamed, her voice cracking with rage and desperation. You ruined me. I gave you everything, my children, my womb, all the sacrifices you demanded. You're so incompetent. And I gave you beauty, the goddess fired back. You begged never to grow old. You wanted to be the most beautiful woman alive. You wanted to wield power beyond your rank. I gave you everything. Then what is happening? Olama screamed. You got it, the goddess continued, for a time. She leaned forward, eyes glowing. But nothing in this world lasts forever. Not even curses. And your time is up, Olama. Olama let out a blood-curdling scream as her magic finally abandoned her. Her beauty was gone, her power drained, her kingdom slipping from her hands. and with one final flash of lightning across the river, the goddess vanished. Queen Olama dropped to the ground, trembling, crumbling, defeated. She was done for. Back in the palace dining room, silence had taken over, tense, thick, and terrifying. Prince Ikenna stood frozen, his breath shallow, eyes locked on the beast beside him. But then, suddenly, a strange light burst into the room, golden and warm, not like fire, but like morning sun touching water for the first time. And the beast let out a deafening scream, collapsing to the floor as the light engulfed her. "Help!" the prince shouted, backing away, panicked. "Somebody help!" Outside, the palace guards were now slamming against the door, desperate to get in. The king, awakened by the noise and guided by fear, was running through the corridor barefoot and confused. And then, "My prince." The voice was soft, steady, human. Prince Ikenna turned around slowly, and what he saw stole his breath away. There, standing in the center of the room, was Princess Morgan, fully herself, whole. And in the daylight, she glowed more than he had ever imagined. Her beauty wasn't just striking, it was divine, radiant, untouchable. Her skin shimmered like polished gold, her eyes held the powers of ocean, and her smile, that smile made his heart collapse. His mouth dropped open, his voice caught in his throat. Is this you?" he asked breathlessly. Morgan's eyes filled with tears. She nodded, slowly, beautifully. And in that moment, he rushed forward and swept her into his arms, holding her so tightly that it felt like he never wanted to let go again. His heart, once confused and broken, was now dancing inside his chest. The door finally crashed open. The guard stumbled in first, followed by the king, and they all froze at the sight. The curse was gone. The princess was back. The king dropped to his knees, his eyes wide. "Morgan, my daughter," he whispered. She turned to him, and they embraced like father and child torn apart by war. Tears, laughter, shock, joy, it all filled the palace at once. The kingdom had its moonlight again. But just as the celebration began to swell, a blood-curdling scream tore through the air. It was from the queen's chamber. Everyone turned without hesitation. They ran. What they found was almost too shocking to believe. A shriveled, hairless old woman rolled on the ground, shrieking, clawing at her skin, crying and begging for mercy. Her face was twisted and sagged. And then she began to confess. "It's me, Olama. I am not who you think I am. This is the real me. I am an old woman obsessed with beauty and power. I was so beautiful in my youth that I never wanted to get old. So I entered into a covenant with Emire, an ancient and powerful river goddess. I killed my 7 children and gave her blood every single year. In exchange, she gave me beauty, power, and charm. That was how I charmed the king. And I got jealous when I saw Princess Morgan and turned her into a beast. That beast, I did it. But Emire betrayed me," she cried. "I cast a spell on her and stole her beauty for myself, allowing her only to shine at night. But the tears of the prince saved her. Please, forgive me," she pleaded, her voice shivering as her entire body shook. Gasp filled the room. The guards recoiled, the king staggered backward, as the fear of what he has just heard surged through his bones. He should have listened to his friend when he warned him. "Olama," he whispered, barely able to believe all she just confessed. But it was true. The beautiful and powerful queen was gone, and in her place was a wretched truth. King Ezebili's face turned to stone, and his heart boiled with anger. For years, he had been wallowing in pains inflicted by a woman he had given his heart. He couldn't believe he had allowed this evil into his life. "Guards!" he roared. "Drag her out to the village square and let her be stoned to death and thrown into the evil forest where wicked things like her belong to. And call Ezedibia to cleanse this kingdom of her evil." "No, no, please," she screamed. "Please, I don't want to die." But the guards seized her, just as the king ordered. And when the villagers heard what she had done, they joined in with stones and fury. Justice took place, and finally peace and sanity returned to the kingdom of Ogu. The drums rolled again. The markets came back to life. The people sang Morgan's name in songs and carved her face into the village stones. The beast was no more. The spell has been lifted, and light has returned to its throne. Months later, on a quiet evening, Prince Ikena visited to see the princess. He had just returned from war and had missed the woman who brought peace to his soul. They sat under the same tree where they first shared wine and dreams. 1,000 fireflies lit the air around them, and the stars blinked in silence. Morgan laughed. "You're quiet, my prince. That's unlike you." He turned to her and took her hands gently. "Because I am trying to hold my heart still," he said. "It won't stop racing." She smiled, confused. "Why?" Then he dropped to one knee, and in that moment the entire world seemed to pause. "Morgan, you're the fire that warmed my lonely nights, the star that guided me through confusion, and the voice that taught me what love sounds like. I have walked through palaces and battlefields, seen many beautiful maidens, but nothing has made my heart tremble like the way you look at me." Tears brimmed in her eyes. "Will you do me the honor," he said, bringing out a beautiful ring made from carved moonstone and coral, "of becoming my wife, my queen, my home, my forever." Morgan dropped to her knees, crying softly, then threw her arms around him. "How could I ever say no to you?" she whispered. "Yes." Their marriage was the most beautiful the kingdom had ever seen. Two powerful kingdoms joined together in love. Villages far and near came bearing gifts. Dancers, drummers, singers, even the skies showered blessings with cool breezes and golden lights. They were married under the open heavens beneath a tree that had seen both sorrow and joy. And together they lived and reigned happily ever after. Hey besties, we've come to the end of this story, and thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I would like you to share your thoughts in the comment section. And if you are yet to subscribe to our channel and you enjoy our stories, please do not skip this video without hitting on the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell so that you get notified whenever we post new stories. Thank you so much for all your love and support. They mean so much to me. Right now, I'll have to go and see you in our next story. Bye!